Hey everybody, welcome back to day two. So I want to talk more about why we struggle with self-esteem. We kind of touched on it before because even if you just look at the definition of self-esteem and then kind of reflect on the places where you feel like you don't have a strong sense of who you are, then you can already start to see what things you might want to change in order to see yourself in a better light. But some of the reasons we struggle is because we often base our identity off of what people tell us or how people react to us. We also define ourselves by our past, thinking that it's a representation of our unworthiness or somehow, pretty much just thinking that we're not good enough because we had to go through those circumstances instead of seeing it as a learning opportunity on how to figure out who you are, especially if you came through something. You may not have done it as gracefully as you would like to, but you did get through it. So even just giving yourself a pat on the back for still being here and realizing that you wouldn't even exist or you wouldn't have made it this far if you weren't capable of overcoming whatever situations that you were facing. Um, a lot of times we place judgments on ourselves, and again, that just comes from having a negative assumption about situations because so many people go through similar circumstances but handle them very differently, and that's also a result of their level of self-esteem, how they see themselves. So it's not the situations and events that we face here that are the issue, it's how you decide you relate to them. So I think I'm reading my notes here. So basically, having that self esteem is deciding your opinion of yourself regardless of those circumstances. Realizing that if you had a stable self esteem that wasn't based on anything outside of you, then you would never feel that sense of not being good enough. You would never feel like you have to try to um, change everything in order for you to feel good, because sometimes you don't really have control over the way things work out, especially if the momentum is already going, and you might see that in hindsight. But for things that are outside of your control, just only in the sense that other people are going to do what they're going to do, even though they're a result of your assumption of them or people in general, you still get to decide if they have some sort of relationship to your self-esteem. Like, but why would you want to give people that power if you don't need to? So if you could recognize that nobody has the power to make you react, you might have been sloppy in your focus or had those assumptions where you needed to be validated or seek approval, only because we kind of learned that from childhood, first with our parents and then through society and school. We feel like for our survival that we have to keep up and compete with other people's standards, but we don't. If you make yourself your own standard, you would never need to compete or feel the need to have that comparison with other people. So I'm going to talk more about that in tomorrow's video, but the main thing I wanted to talk about to kind of wrap this up is just realizing that external events and your reactions to it, they're really just a result of your perspective. It's your interpretation of the situation itself that will give whatever impact it has to you. So that I just mean that to say, if you were in debt and you feel like you're unworthy, you feel like you're drowning, like you can't keep up with your bills, and because of that you decide that you're unworthy, how are you going to expect to allow abundance in if you're allowing your self-esteem to be based on your present situation, which doesn't have to be something that's permanent. It's just a lot of people have that mindset that if you're going through something, you have to stick with that identity and it doesn't change, and you're a product of those things. But how many people have you heard about that paid off their bills, that somehow received enough financial abundance to get themselves out of sticky situations? Or even if you had to work for it, like a lot of people found a way to budget, and even if it took them years, they still found a way to pay off whatever debt, because whatever belief systems they had supported that method of them allowing themselves to be financially free. But when you open yourself up to manifestation, law of assumption, you allow yourself to experience more possibilities than you could ever have imagined. So it's really just allowing yourself to see what the path of least resistance is for you, even if that means temporarily you might pick up a couple shifts because that puts you at ease to be able to contribute something to paying your bills off, but just while knowing at the same time, okay, at the end of the day, the end result is it's going to get paid. Would I rather have to work like a slave to try and pay this off, or would I rather be able to manifest some sort of gift of abundance in another form outside of working for it? Like, I think most of us would want that easier path. But if our perception of ourselves is that we're not worthy of things like that happening to us, things like miracles, which I don't even want to call a miracle because that will just make it seem like something that's not normal, when it in reality is miracles are supposed to be normal. So if you're not having that positive expectation of it, the fault lies with your mindset and with your perception of yourself and what you feel deserving of. Most of us still feel like our deservability is based on some action we need to take or that we have to work hard for it, but that's not the case. We were born worthy. We were born with the perfect amount of self-esteem, the perfect amount of confidence. We were born with all the attributes we needed, but then over time it got muted and, distorted with whatever we were surrounded by growing up, and we just influenced to kind of separate from that knowing and that conviction of who we are. But when you realize the self-esteem isn't a problem, because you're doing a great job of perceiving yourself as someone who's not good enough, so you're really sticking to that image you created of yourself. So all you really have to do is flip that image you have of yourself into something positive and constructive, and you'll start to see changes immediately. The first thing is that you'll just feel better, because now instead of being negative to yourself, you're talking to yourself in a positive way. And then obviously if you start to believe that, you know what, you're right, I am worthy, I really had no reason to feel this way, and when you believe that about yourself, everybody else is going to be a reflection of it too. So someone who walks around confident and worthy is just naturally attracting people that treat them in a respectful way, whether that's friendships, relationships, work relationships, or just any type of relationship to people in general. So when you change your concept of yourself, you manifest a reality of people who treat you based on those perceptions. So tomorrow's video, I just wanted to talk about just more of what it takes to create that foundation. But I know I touched on a couple of things just in the first two videos that might have given insights for reflection. But yeah, we're going to talk about just a couple things to keep in mind when you catch yourself in those moments of doubting, as you're stepping into remembering that you do have enough self-esteem, you are good enough. I just wanted to kind of lay out a couple of tips, things that I use for myself too, just insights that I've discovered to allow myself to really feel comfortable being who I am and know that I am good enough. So again, I want to thank you guys for watching and stay tuned for tomorrow, day 3 of our Building Self-Esteem series. See you later.